it's another beautiful morning up in paradise. As a lot of you know, I live up in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and it's a glorious winter, spring-like morning up here. It's actually quite warm. Wind's starting to blow a little bit, but beautiful, beautiful day. You know, I wanted to talk a little bit about wood. Many of my videos, I speak about different species of wood because I'm a woodworker, but there's something that I've really never shared on my videos, and what makes me more of an authority on wood and different types of wood. And that has a lot to do with where I've been situating my equipment yard for so many years. I had an association with a lumber yard, and then later on I had my own lumber yard. The first lumber yard was a place called Northern Hardwoods, and there was a good friend of mine named Russ who had this pretty good sized yard, and he let me park my trucks there. I paid him, of course, but it was a huge warehouse that brought in woods from all over the world. And one of the things that we did there was we brought in local milled woods, and I had a section of the warehouse where I was able to sell my lumber from some of the local stuff. You know, he got his cut, of course. But because I worked in a lumber yard, you know, every day I would come in from my tree jobs, and then I'd go in and deal with what was going on in there. And then later on, I actually had my office in there. I saw all the woods that were coming in, and I got to learn all the exotic woods. So he brought in woods from all over the world. And then later on, I brought in my sawmill, and he had me doing all of his custom milling. So he would bring in logs. You know, I remember one time he brought a whole truckload of these incredible Honduras mahogany logs. Another time he brought in a truckload of Cambodian rosewood, some of the rarest rosewood in the world, and ebony, and you know, just exotic woods from Mexico, from all over the world. He'd bring in, you know, either big cants or big logs, and he'd need to resaw them. So he paid me, or more often he gave me a cut of the wood of all these exotics. So by using the wood and milling it and processing it, I became very familiar with all these different species of wood. And let's go back in time, way back. You know, I can go back to when I was about 22 or 23 years old, and I bought my first Alaska chainsaw mill. And I milled a lot of black walnut. I milled some big pine logs. I actually built a little cabin up in the Northern California. I bought a piece of property up there, and a buddy of mine, and we worked together for several summers, you know, building each other's cabin. And we did it all out of wood that we processed with an Alaska chainsaw mill. That was a blast. So I learned a lot about lumber and milling lumber from an early start. So fast forward, I've owned a Wood-Mizer sawmill. I owned that for about 15 years. I ultimately ended up selling it to Russ because I've got a buddy that has a little bit larger Wood-Mizer. He's got the 36-inch. He lives up by me. But I did keep the Lucas mill. And if you look back in my videos, you'll see more about the Lucas mill and how it works. The Lucas mill is a different kind of sawmill. It's got a circular saw blade, but it also has the advantage of setting it up with a slabbing rail. I can put, much like the Alaskan chainsaw mill, I can put a chainsaw bar and chain on a 25 horsepower motor and set it up with the rails for the Lucas mill, and I can do big slabs. Of course, I have to market big slabs and know what to deal with them, so that's a whole nother problem of its own. But I've got that opportunity. For the most part, I use the circular saw blade, which allows me to cut construction lumber or large cants. A cant is a big chunk of wood that you later resaw down into smaller pieces. So I'm capable of doing an 8x8, which is a pretty good sized cant and awfully heavy to deal with. I do a lot of 4x6s and pieces of wood that can easily be resawn later on the smaller bandsaw mill that I have in the shop. So a lot of you may have seen my video about I am a wood junkie. And yes, I am. I collect wood, use a lot of it, but honestly, I'll never be able to use all the wood that I've got. I do sell wood to friends. I'm not in the wood business anymore, so I pretty much like to trade and deal with wood on a different level. So anyway, I want to keep this kind of brief. That's my history of why I understand wood so much. And you know what? It's Saturday morning. My shop is over there behind the sun. I'm gonna go do some woodworking.